Hey, everybody, and welcome to the HERstory Collaborative. My name is Jen Buck, and I'm your host here in the collab. Now, I'm all about advocating, activating, and amplifying high-performing women, and that's what the HERstory Collaborative is all about. Trailblazing women who are changing their little corner of the world. Now, my next guest is Jane Finette, and she is definitely changing her corner of the world. Jane is the founder and executive director of the Coaching Fellowship, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the development of young women leaders in social change. As a leadership expert and certified professional co-active coach, Jane has dedicated her life to achieving equality for women, empowering them to create impact and build the world of tomorrow, today. A 2020 Women Forward Gold Award winner from the Business Council for Peace, Jane's passion, expertise, and 2 decades of experience is anchored at the intersection of technology and human potential. At her core, she empowers individuals and communities to solve the world's largest and most persistent and perennial problems. She is also the author of the book Unlocked: How Empowered Women Empower Women. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am for this interview. Welcome to the collab, Jane Finette.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm so jazzed to be here, and thank you massively for the opportunity to come and be in conversation with you.
You are so welcome. You know, when I heard from your team, I said to them, I don't think I've ever had a more perfect guest who was proposed to me, because everything you stand for, I am screaming and from the rooftops, and I am pounding my drum, and you're doing it. And I am just so honored to meet you.
Well, bless you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not doing it alone, that's for sure, but I'm happy to have kickstarted particularly this work with social impact on women. It's been my life's work and continues to be so.
It's just amazing. And I know that you are from the UK. And so how long have you been here in the States?
Yeah, I arrived in 2009. So I used to work for Mozilla, the folks behind the Firefox web browser. I was actually the first employee for Mozilla in Europe. So I was employee 103 back in
Wow.
2007.
Yeah.
And then they relocated me and my husband to the Bay Area in
Okay.
2009. Yeah. And I used to head up all of user engagement and retention for Firefox for many, many years. So that was my first big job in
Yeah.
America.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so now you have this organization, and you are committed to making sure that we are creating an equitable environment, that women understand the importance, of course, of being a feminist and seeing themselves as activists. And you have a message that you really believe that women are the answer to saving the world, which, by the way, I have to tell you, Jane, I say this all the time on probably every interview, that I am convinced that women are going to fix everything. So tell me about you. Like, how did you come to this? Because I feel like I found a sister in belief for sure in you.
Thank you. Well, and I do wish that I had, an epiphany kind of moment. But the God's honest truth is that creating the coaching fellowship was a happy accident for
No.
me. And I decided I was going to give back some coaching places in my practice, and specifically for women in social change, realizing that they would really not have an opportunity to work on themselves at such a young age.
Mm.
And it took off like a rocket ship. I said I had 3 coaching places in my practice, and about 45 women later who'd applied, was
Wow.
kind of overwhelmed. And so I went back to the people who I trained to coach with and said, hey, are you interested in helping some incredible pro bono clients? They're all incredible women coming from 12 countries, all working in nonprofits. They're founders of nonprofits, social impact entrepreneurs. And they said yes. So we started with 16 coaches. And then over the period of about 6 months, people kept coming to me because it kind of looked like a program to the outside
Yeah.
world. And more women kept coming to me saying, when are you going to run another program? I said, it's not a program. More coaches had heard what we were doing and said, can I help you? When's the next
Yeah.
program? It's not a program. And eventually I actually had to surrender to building
Mm.
a program. And I said, okay, I'm going to run one program and let's see. And we had more than 700 applications, and it was insane. So if I fast forward to today, the coaching fellowship, we've supported more than 1,300 young women social environmental change leaders from more than 80 countries, and it just kind of it blows my mind, Jen. And before that, I mean, I was starting women's groups within Mozilla, doing this within my own network. But really, it was when I created the coaching fellowship that things took off for me, and that's been my day-to-day job, in and out every single day for the last 8 years. Yeah.
It's got to be so inspiring.
It really is, and it's there have been many dark times, haven't there, in the last few years, and sadly, talking to you in the spring of 2022 with a war in Europe, which is unfathomable, it does give me a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration when I see what these young women are doing, and as you were just saying, I mean, I wholly believe that women are the answer to a more just, equitable, sustainable, peaceful world. And just given the chance, I mean, we know that when women sit in the sit at the negotiating table, there's going to be longer lasting peace. We know that when women are given access to agricultural tools and even land, that the hunger decreases. There's evidence that says 5 million more people would not go hungry if women were given the tools in the developing world to actually cultivate the land. Literacy rates go up, infant mortality rates go down. There's even evidence from the Rainforest Alliance that says women are the key to ending the climate crisis. They were like,
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So no silver bullet for all of these things that we have going on in the world, but empowering women and girls comes pretty damn close. So as much as you and I can do this work and accelerate that, I think we're on the right track, even in these difficult times.
Yeah. I love the quote in your book that says, what if we are indeed the ones we've been waiting for? And that by doing what we inherently do best, with ease and with love, magnified and executed by the hundreds of thousands, we might start a quiet revolution in our own house, in our own office, and the world. That is a goosebump quote.
Actually, thank you for reading it. I know I wrote it. I gave myself goosebumps. And that's what, actually what motivated me is part of the motivation for writing the book, because I think as women, we can feel so disenfranchised, that somehow our actions aren't enough. We see, we were just before we started recording just talking about equitable pay and equal opportunity, whether we talk about the right for girls to go to school, in the world. And the list is endless, and it's so overwhelming to think, gosh, how are we going to solve this? How do we reach equity in our lifetime? And yet really it is only by the small everyday actions repeated by those 100,000 that we will get to change. It's the only way it ever has been. But I think as women, we can often feel that it's not enough. It's not enough. If we can just help this one person, or say this one encouraging thing that keeps her in the workforce, or has her decide to apply for that cool job, it might not seem like, oh, my encouraging words were enough, but actually it could have been everything. Right. It could have been the difference between her going and staying. So we must keep showing up for our sisters in the small ways. Yeah.
When I was with a startup, not very different than you. And I spent a decade there in the first 10 years of my career. And I always knew I wanted to be a professional speaker, because when I was going to college, my mom had brought me to a women's conference. And so I went to this conference and I dragged my feet, did not want to be there. And I remember sitting there and I was kind of, feeling small, because all of these women were really powerful. It was in Los Angeles. And I was just thinking, gosh, I'm 18 and I'm in like a college sweatshirt and Birkenstocks, 501 jeans. I mean, just feeling very small. And I remember not wanting to be there, but the keynote speaker got up, and as she was doing her thing, again, not really checked in, but I remember saying to my mom, because there were a couple of funny, witty, really sort of slicing and dicing moments where I couldn't help but kind of giggle, and I remember looking at my mom and I said, "Who's the old broad?" And my mom was like, "Oh," and she said to me, "Jennifer, that's Joan Rivers."
Oh, no way.
Yeah. But I was 18. So of course I wasn't really, all that dialed in. But let me tell you, it was the first standing ovation I ever gave. It was the moment lightning hit for me when I realized I'm going to do that. That is exactly what I'm going to do. And I ended up through my next couple of months told everybody I'm going to be a motivational speaker. And I talked about Joan Rivers and ended up getting this job at the startup because I was so inspired by changing the world and being a speaker and spreading the message of, hope and change and all of that. So I got the job. And the amazing thing is, that was when I was 18. When I was 38, I was getting involved in television. And I had a television hosting coach. And I'll be darned if it wasn't Joan Rivers' assistant previously of 20 years. And he said, "Do you want to connect with her?" And I got to tell her.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh.
Remembered that keynote.
That event.
Because she had tried to get out of it because her husband, which she had talked about, had taken his own life 6 weeks earlier. And she, of course, was trying to get out of a keynote while she was mourning, right? And they said, we can't. So she said her whole life, she has resented that keynote. And now that she knows that, it's giving me goosebumps and makes me want to cry.
Wow. Thank you.
Now that I know my one, I understand why I had to give that day. And you just don't know who you're going to impact, right? You don't know how far they're going to go and what matters most, but you just have to keep giving. And that's what I think is so beautiful about what you're doing, is that you just keep giving because you don't know how far they'll go. You don't know how important that is in that moment.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I'm just drinking in what you shared, Jen. That's so incredible.
Yeah.
And it's so true. We really everything starts with a small action, doesn't it, really? And I think that's the thing that we forget often, all humans, that we just have to take that first step and see where it will go. And who knows? In my book I write many stories about incredible women working to empower women and girls. And the reason I share those stories is because really they didn't really realize what they were doing at the time. I think Tracy Chow, who kicked off the diversity debate in Silicon Valley, she wrote a blog post and just kind of encouraged people to also share the diversity data of the number of women and women of color in tech, people of color in tech. She had no idea it would take off like a rocket ship. And so yes, I mean I think the trying is really the important part.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you think you would have benefited from in your life from a book like Unlocked, the book that you wrote? How do you think it may have changed your trajectory had you had something like this when you were starting your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have worried quite as much, actually, as well as sort of like understanding. I think maybe all young people are the same, but we're sort of looking for that big moment, that big, before it was this, now it's that kind of moment, and then recognizing that it is in the journey, that it's not linear. When I talk to people, I say, gosh, when you look at my resume, I look like I'm 6 different people. I think I definitely had either a lot of energy to give or I had a commitment issue. I'm not sure which, bit of both, maybe.
Yes.
And so I worried a lot. And so I think being able to relax and to the last part of the book is really about access to yourself. And I think this part was really the lesson I wished I could have had 20 years before, which is a good chunk of what we do at Coach Fellowship. When I say access to yourself, so really fundamentally understand my values, what I'm here to do in this lifetime, what was holding me back. And in part of that, also being willing to ask for help, which was something that I wasn't good at doing and still struggle with. But I think when I really got a little older and then started to ask other women for help, things really unlocked for me. Yeah. They started changing. Yeah, I was trying to do it all on my own for the longest time. Sounds familiar, huh?
Yes, it does. Yes, far too familiar. Yeah. And I think it's amazing too, that when we look statistically at how women respond, women in these executive roles who have made it into the C-suite, let's say, that 80% of them actually say, and I think the number is actually somewhere around 82, 83, but over 80% of them say that they understand the responsibility in bringing other women with them. And there are lots of women who want to help, who want to reach down and pull their sisters up, right? And I think that is, we talk a lot about how the world tells women that they can't get along, right? And that is echoed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Gosh,
that we're going to have a
interview.
fight. Is that what's right?
No, totally. All of the interviews that I did for research for the book, invariably this would come up. And yet I couldn't really find, I think in hundreds of people that I've spoken to since the book came out too, 2 or 3 have had a pretty bad experience with a woman manager or colleague or something like this. But you could also say the same of a male colleague, you know, but very few. And of course, we've just lost Madeleine Albright, who said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And this would be brought back to me again and again in these interviews. And I was like, but I've never experienced that, you know. Most of the time, women want to help each other, and just given the opportunity, you know, the permission to do that. And what I'm delighted to see is that more of us are not waiting for permission. We are taking the permission and asking for forgiveness later. Totally. The piece that I get very passionate about with in the book, one of the keys, I call it sending the elevator down. And for me, it's particularly around the younger women. This is where my whole thing is with work. Because we know that those first time opportunities for a woman to actually become a manager, whether that is of people or a project or something like this, this is actually stuck. They call it the broken rung. It's been the McKinsey Lean In. It's the Women in the Workplace study, which they've been doing for about 6 years. This is the one number that hasn't moved. So we'll see slight gains for women in VP roles, slight C-level roles. The first time manager level has not shifted in 6 years. So that's kind of where I want to point, as I think in business, we're very often looking, how do we elevate more women into senior roles? Yes, don't stop doing that. But also we need to look a little bit further down, because if they don't get that chance, they're never going to make the time up. They just never are. They're never going to be able to catch up.
Right. Absolutely. And ask for help, like you started with, right? Ask for help, because the women who are in these leadership roles understand this. And while they are all standing on the shoulders of the women who came before them to break the glass ceilings, women of, at least I feel like my generation, our generation, you and I are in the same, I'm sure, that we understand the responsibility to clear the shards of glass, to bring those women in with us, right? So someone else broke the glass, but we understand the importance of making it easier for them to come in. And so reach out to the women around you and ask them for help, because we understand it's our responsibility. And most of us have not ever bought into this belief that we can't get along, or that there will be a cat fight. We don't buy into it. This is something that it's not our problem to fix. Much like in the discussion around race issues, racism is not the problem of our people of color. I'll say that, all right, to fix. It's the problem of the white people to fix. And so just like this problem with, the cat fight, story that's been told ad nauseum, it's not women's issue to fix. It's the men's. And it really is about us rising above, regardless of what others think around us. Would you agree with that?
I do think so. And I think, it clearly came from somewhere, although there's a part of me that wants to say that was like heterosexual patriarchy, whitewashing something. But, we do know there was a time where there's so few women executives, and they did have to fight to get those positions, and had to show up like a male leader, bringing all of those qualities which aren't really natural for women to bring. And so it definitely has been a thing. But as we see more women in positions of power and influence, leading as they would lead normally and naturally and authentically, then we have, this is the thing I was going to say, sort of like, there'll be more examples, and we can relax a little bit more into ourselves and our being and how we lead. But it
Mhm.
also, isn't this great for men too? Because there's all of this ridiculousness about how men lead and being driven by ego and
Yeah.
one-upping it. I mean, I know I'm talking archetypally here, but it'll be great for men too when women also are showing different ways to lead, because I think it's a difficult thing for men to also live and be successful in the workplace in a natural way. It's always
Yeah.
a competition.
Yes.
That can't be good.
Yes. In my work as a speaker, when I'm speaking from stages, and my focus is women in leadership and getting women into places of power. And I always say that we all have the sacred feminine. We're all feminine and masculine,
Yes.
but there is culturally a very strong suggestion that if you're in leadership, you have to lean on the masculine. When in fact, what we know is that organizations do better, boards do better, climate does better.
The world does better.
In the middle
Yes.
of a COVID crisis, countries do better when we lean into that feminine power, right? And so
Yeah,
that should be a relief for everyone. We
so we
all are
do. Yeah.
masculine and feminine, and we're finding that what the world needs right now is feminine power. And so
Yeah.
that takes some of the pressure off men too, to always have to stay in
Yeah.
that
I mean,
masculine.
they're exhausted,
Yes.
it's exhausting for them too. And we're like, yeah, like we'd love to help. Like, let's do this together. What can we create when all of us are bringing our best selves forward, all the
Mhm.
best parts of ourselves? Like,
Yeah.
wow, like the potential of that is palpable. And
Yeah.
my God, we need it. We have so
Yes.
much to do. We
Yes.
do.
So let me ask you, what can women who are not in positions of power do to help other women? Because
Yeah.
we talked about, the C-suite reaching down and within, right? So what can women who are not maybe in those positions do to help other women?
Yeah, I love this. And actually, I would just say, even though we might think we are not in a position of power influence, I think we still are. So never want to give our power away. So, I know that there might not be so many things that we could make happen, let's say within an organization, if you're not the vice president and have all that budget and decision-making authority, but still, we have a lot of power that we can share and bring our sisters forward. One of the things that I love to talk about, and this is a little bit of the coaching stuff that's coming through, is one of the keys I talk about is help herself, and to really encourage and allow a fellow woman to really stand in her full potential. And that is not by you telling her giving advice and telling her what you think you should do and so on, but really helping her figure that out for herself and stand in her full glory.
Yes.
That's something that I learned from coaching. I was trained at CTI, Coaches Training Institute. And one of the things they kind of preach, which I definitely drank the Kool-Aid was to hold someone naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Naturally creative,
Mm.
resourceful, and whole. And I just love this. It's become such a deep value of mine. To really, if someone doesn't need fixing, they're not broken.
Yeah.
So what can you do to help them help themselves, right? And
Yes.
so that, just a very simple thing, but it's a shift in, we love, as women, we love to help, right? We're
Mhm.
like, let me do that for you, or
Yes.
and that's great, but we have to know when that is called for, or when maybe it's even more powerful to
Mhm.
say, well, what do you think? Like, what's one thing you could do today that would actually make a difference in that situation, and have them come up with the answer, because they're going to be more committed and willing to take it if it was their idea.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So I would love to throw some questions at you. And I know you have not been prepared for these. And so please don't feel stressed about them. Like if you don't have an
Not at
answer, you
all.
don't have an answer. It's okay.
Okay.
But I
That's
love to
good.
ask because they're just fun and it just sort of adds I don't know, kind of a little sparkly
It's
element in all.
lovely. Yes.
Good,
Oh,
good,
I'm
good.
excited.
So, if you were to choose your favorite woman in history, now, by the way, this could be someone who's alive now. All right. I don't
Okay.
want you to feel like we have to limit this to someone who's gone. So, who would your favorite woman in history be if you could spend an hour just picking her brain?
So, full disclosure to your listeners, you did actually give me this as an example before we
One,
got
yes.
on. And then I went completely, my mind went blank, and I did have a little panic because I was like, oh my God, who am I going to pick?
Yeah.
And, I have struggled, and I talk about this often, with role models. I don't have any. I have really struggled. But what came to me was that I would love to meet any woman from times gone way back, when women were as equal to men, when women were also witnessed as sacred beings who had such a deep connection to Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to be in conversation and to understand, like, what would it be to be a woman at that time, to be
Yes.
unfettered by any history or beliefs or bias, or our 1,000 years of being kept under and so on. So that would be something I would be, wow, that would be
Beautiful.
amazing.
Yes. What's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to?
Ethiopia.
Mm.
Hands down. Yeah, we went, my husband and I went about 8 years ago, and it was just the most incredible land and people. Very difficult times at the moment in Ethiopia, but I do hope they'll find peace themselves too soon.
Yeah.
That to be, the birthplace of humanity.
Mhm.
We saw Lucy, the skeleton, which was 60,000 years old. It's breathtaking, and such beautiful people.
Mhm.
If hopefully things will improve, and I would encourage anyone who has an opportunity to go.
Mhm. And the
Incredible.
only place in Africa that wasn't colonized ever is Ethiopia.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another one of the
Yes, and you're right. And actually, yes, they're I mean, because of the conflict they have at the moment, it's not such a great example. But they had lived for, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of years with several hundred tribes as well. So very, very different. So they had learned to actually find peace amongst each other,
Mm,
and yet very, very separate kind of
yeah,
tribal systems. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I had the opportunity to spend a month in Uganda, and it's my favorite too. I've never seen more beautiful earth, more beautiful people, a more beautiful sky. It's just
True. Yeah.
magic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like coming home, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I tell people all the time that I lost a little bit of my American when I went there. And I understood that I became more connected to the human race. I became more connected to Africa, the homeland. I became less American and much fuller as a human being. Mhm.
That's so beautiful. People said to me for weeks before I was going, they said, "Oh, you need to prepare yourself. What are the things you're going to see?" Very alarmist, like, "Oh my goodness, you're going to have to brace yourself." And when I was there, I didn't feel any of that. But what I hadn't prepared for was my re-entry
Yeah.
back into America.
Mhm.
And that, I didn't want to turn the tap on. I did.
Right.
I ate like a mouse. I
Yes.
was grateful for everything. I was so disillusioned with the world, and
Mhm.
it was interesting. Yeah. So if anyone has the opportunity to travel and see more of the world, particularly our developing world, then it is a tonic, because you will do things differently,
Yes.
and we need more
Yes.
of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is your favorite book or podcast? I don't know if you are someone who's more of a reader, more of a listener. What would your very favorite ever be?
Oh, gosh, these are tough
Are
questions,
they? I'm
Jen.
so
I know.
sorry. I know.
I know.
If you're a big
I,
reader, it's a hard one. I
I
know.
am. I was just going to say, and I used to be a big reader. Then I wrote a book, and I didn't read anything apart from research and so on. And I just started reading again in 2022, and I set myself the goal: I'm going to read 50 books. I thought that's pretty achievable, but
Wow.
I've read 30 now, and
Wow.
I know, and I was like, wow. So I have read a lot of books just recently. The one that I recommend. Let me put it that way. I'm not sure it would be my favorite, but it's the one I recommend a lot, which is Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you know him.
Mhm.
He wrote the war. I better get this right now, hadn't I?
I know the pressure.
The War of Art, not the Art of War. That would be something different. And he he actually wrote a sort of like a smaller version of that, and it's called Do the Work.
Okay.
And it's really about getting out of your own way. It's about this. There's the inner critic in our minds that always wants us to play it safe and
Yes.
just not put yourself out there and to procrastinate and all those things. And it's a beautiful book called Do the Work. And I will read that once a year. It's really
Wow.
it's really a
That's good to know.
shot in the arm, and
Yes.
I like to give it to young people. It's something to when you're in the dip of things, that it helps you get back on
Oh, I
track.
love that. What a great suggestion. Okay, so this is a question that may be hard to answer. So just know you can take your sort of pass if you'd like. All
Thank
right.
you. Okay.
What's a quirky or wacky fact about you that maybe not a lot of people know?
Um, well, at one time people knew, and it's I'm not sure it's quirky. Let me see. I raced cars for 2 years.
What?
Yeah, after college. Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
did grass.
super
Yeah,
cool.
so it's not something I generally talk about
Yeah.
much. But yeah, I did grass car racing for 2 years, and I was actually pretty successful at it. And then I broke up with a guy I was dating who fixed the car, and it just my career ended
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, so that's where that left. I
That's
left it. But
fantastic. I
yeah,
love
and
it.
actually about, gosh, maybe 15 years ago, my husband and I went to an event, and they had a whole simulator for race car driving. And they were like, Jane, you should have a go. And it was literally set up like a car.
Yeah.
And I came second and just missed out on a holiday. They were going to give a holiday to the winner. But I was like, gosh, maybe I'll do this again someday.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so this one should be easy. What's the best word to describe you?
Uh, can I have two?
Yes. You can even have
um,
more. Yes.
I guess all heart, all
Mm.
heart.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
and
have
I
to
get
if
that
you're doing this
reflected
work,
back.
right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think
Good.
so. Yeah.
So here's the last one. Finish this sentence for me. When I'm really, really old, I hope to see.
Us move beyond equity in my lifetime.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Where can people find you? How can they get a hold of this book? Give us all the deets.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much for letting me share. So my name, Jane Finette, janefinette.com. You can find out everything from there. So from that, it's a jumping off place to the coaching fellowship and our work with social environmental change leaders. Amazon, of course, Jeff knows everything. So Amazon, searching just Jane Finette, you'll find the book, or Barnes and Noble. And I know a lot of people care about their local bookstores and have ordered the book in as well. And I'm always delighted to connect on LinkedIn. Just let me know where you heard me, and yeah, love to be in touch.
I love that. Excellent. I am so grateful for you being here. And before we actually sign off, I do want to make sure that I give a big thank you to our podcast sponsor, who is Lillian Sue with In Retrospect Writing and PR Services. She's a longtime PR coach and publicist who's focused on empowering creative entrepreneurs to reach their fullest potential. And she helps people become global industry leaders through strategic and personalized coaching. And so she also has, by the way, this really amazing platform and course where she helps people do it themselves. So you don't have to rely on someone else to do it for you. And she's dedicated to helping creatives and entrepreneurs build that really strong, healthy PR mindset. So if you are interested in connecting with Lillian Sue with In Retrospect Writing Services, you can go to inretrospectwritingservices.com. So Jane, I am so grateful for you. This has been such a joy for me. You were really just incredible. And I look at you and think, how have I not been connected to you? And so this has really been something that's been an honor for me. So thank you for spending time.
Oh, thank you very, very much. And this is just the beginning, Jen. That's
Yes,
how I
it
see it.
is.
Thank
That's
you.
right. And now we're connected on LinkedIn too. So that's a beautiful thing. Everybody, thank you for joining in. We've loved having you. And as you know, we always drop one of these episodes every week. So we look forward to connecting with you in the next collab. Thank you so much again, Jane, and everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.